Hey guys, what's going on? Today we mosey on down to Fier Street, 1666.
That's right, everybody, 1666. So what's going on here? There's an evil brewing in the town. Is it actually witchcraft? Is it homosexuality? Or is it something else? Stick around because we're about to find out.
Jesus Christ! All right, so here it is, the conclusion to the Fier Street series.
That's right.
It's almost like this, they're stuck in the 1600s or something.
Yeah. So this one picks up right where Fier Street 78 left off, right? She touches the grave or whatever, and all of a sudden she is Sarah Fier back in 1666. So we start out there, and, of course, it shows an old school, old-timey town back in the 1666, but... Funny thing about this, though, evidently they're all of Irish descent, but most of the Irish accents, most of the Irish accents sucked. Like there were a couple people that did pretty well with it. Most of them just sucked, especially the main actress. Like her Irish accent was friggin' horrible. Like not even close to what a real Irish accent would be, but they went with it anyway. They didn't care. And so we got this little Irish town, and we joked about it in the beginning about homosexuality, but that's kind of what's going on here, right? So you got the main actress playing Sarah Fier now. And the girl from the first couple episodes, it was her girlfriend, plays her girlfriend again in this.
Yeah, she played Sam, and now she's
playing Hannah, right? So they still got this sexual vibe going on between them, right? And of course, way back then, man, that was a huge no-no.
Well, I gotta say, though, like when this started off in the 1600s, I was like, I don't know if I'm digging this. That made me very nervous, like going that far back. Because the first one is just a couple years. This one is kind of like a big leap. And I get they're going back to the origin of things, but the first one, it's a couple decades, and now we're all of a sudden in the 1600s. So
right. Well, one thing with that, too...
It's just a different landscape.
Well, one thing with that, too, they kind of, with the amount of black actors that was in this show, they're back in 1666, there weren't a lot of free black people around, so so kind of seeing that from 1666 was kind of like, town probably wouldn't be like that back then, because back then there were some
taking a lot of liberties.
Yeah, they took a lot of liberties with it, right? But of course they had to because they're having, they got the actors from the first couple into this one, they did, and the kids did a good job. So, so that was kind of like, well, but whatever, it's liberties with the movie, it's something that can easily be overlooked and it's not a big deal. But I just thought it was kind of strange, off of it because of how far back they went back, like you were saying. But, and then, of course, the whole homosexuality thing, right? I mean, that back then, everybody back then was big-time Christian, right? These little Christian communities they lived in. And, homosexuality was a huge no-no, and, especially back then when the times of the witchcraft and everything, where they're going to take stuff like that and just throw it in your face and call you out for it, and you potentially risk getting killed over it.
I was a little annoyed with this in the beginning because I'm like, the 1600 time frame, I was like, oh, God, I just don't know about this. But then the story kind of grabbed me a little bit, and I really think out of all three movies, this has the best story to it.
No, yeah, this one definitely had the best story. And the reason is because it finally put the story together, right? Finally put all the pieces together. Finally shows us what's going on and how we got to where we're at. And they throw a couple little things in there that surprise you, right? It's like, oh, I kind of didn't see that coming. And, but they do. They give you a good story and they wrap it up well. And, now as far as an actual scary slasher flick goes, the second one takes the cake on that one big time, right? Second one was by far the best.
This one's not really scary or anything at all.
No, this one's just very much more based on the story. I mean, some people die, but it's nothing like...
Because this one also starts off as the origin story, so there's nothing to really fear
in the beginning.
Because, like, Sarah Fier is not, like, coming after people and stuff like that, so there's nothing like that initially going on. Right.
Well, and the fact that they throw in there that, when you later find out that Sarah Fier was never the problem to begin with, right? It never was about her like you thought it was.
This reminds me of, like, Resident Evil The Village a little bit.
Yeah, kind of like that. Right. Yeah, exactly. But, so, you get, and then the guy that plays Tommy in the first one plays like the town drunk in this one, right? So all the kids, so it starts out where they're having like this big harvest festival coming up or whatever, like it's the new crops coming in and whatever. And so all the kids evidently during this time of year, they go out for a night and get drunk together out in the woods, right? So you got all the town kids get together, they go out and get drunk. And of course, Sarah Fier and Hannah, they're already getting close, and Hannah's mother kind of sees it. I think the town kind of thinks a little bit of something, but they end up making out in the woods, and somebody sees them making out in the woods, right? So Tommy's character sees them, and so does somebody else, which we'll get into later. And Tommy outs him. Oh, I saw them in the woods, they were making out, X, Y, and Z. That's the devil. That's witchery, and we can't be having that in our town. And he's preaching to everybody about how horrible it is, right? And then everybody starts coming down on Hannah and Sarah.
Yeah, and then Hannah's dad is the town pastor, and he kind of gets sick.
Yeah, he gets
And then she calls over Sarah Fier, and they're like, "Oh my God, what's going on here?"
Mm-hmm. Well, but before that, what happened was they went to the doctor to get some meds for somebody else for Hannah's mom, right? They ended up going to the doctor to get some meds for Hannah's mom because she wasn't feeling well in the beginning. And when they went to the doctor, who was played by the camp counselor lady from the second movie, she's like the town doc, but she's ostracized. She lives off on her own because people think she's a witch, kind of. And but when they get there, they found the book, right? The book of the devil, right? It's like the devil's book and how you can conjure the devil and demons and all that stuff. Sarah found it there. And, she didn't say anything about it, but when they got back into town, she confided in this guy, Solomon, Solomon's always had a thing for Sarah, and Sarah's dad wants her to marry Solomon. And so Solomon's somebody like Sarah can confide in, and his name's Solomon Good, right? So he's from the Good family. And he,
and it took me a while to realize that's the sheriff guy. Everyone's playing a dual role here.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
I thought it was okay because they were flashing to show them what they really look like sometimes. But then at the same time, it's like, if you're going to flash to show what they really look like, then why not just have those people act? Yeah, why not use those people? Yeah. Yeah, it kind of didn't make sense. I mean, I guess I get it a little bit, because you didn't want to pay.
It's cost savings.
Right,
I don't know.
Exactly.
I guess
cost
they're
savings,
like, remember these guys from the other one? We're tying it all together, see?
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm like,
we're having them play their ancestors.
Not Sarah Fier, so I don't know why she's playing her, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. But, whatever. It is what it is. But, but so she tells Solomon about the book, right? So then but then you never think anything of it after that. We'll flash forward. Like Josh was saying, all of a sudden the pastor's getting really sick, and people are like, okay, what's going on with the pastor? Hannah takes Sarah to the house, and they start praying for him. They open the Bible and start praying for him. And the mom walks in, and she grabs Sarah. She's like, "This is all happening because of you. You harlot. You're turning my daughter gay." Yanks her out of the house and throws her out of the house. And then
you're bringing this evil on us.
Bringing this evil on us. Don't you bring that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
And you better pray for mercy.
Yeah. Pray for mercy for your soul because the devil's in you, girl. And then flash forward, all of a sudden everybody's like, "Hey, the pastor's got the kids all locked in the church. What's going on?" So so they're trying to get in there and find out what's going on. Why the pastor's in there with all the town children locked in the church, and they kick the door down. And who was it? Solomon that actually saw first? I think it was Solomon.
He went in there first.
Solomon went in first, and he
grabbed the pitchfork.
Yeah, he grabbed a pitchfork, and he sees what's happening. So he's trying to hold everybody else back, like, y'all don't want to see this. But of course, everybody walks in, and you can see that all the kids are dead. I mean, you can tell by looking at them, they're slumped over. And the pastor's up there preaching.
Their eyes are missing.
But yeah, the pastor had plucked all the kids' eyeballs out and killed the kids, and he plucked his own eyeballs out, and he's up there preaching with his eyeballs out, and they end up, they kill the pastor. And then, of course, now
and leading
all
up
hell
to
breaks
that,
loose in the town.
Like the pig eats like its piglets.
Yeah. The dog.
Her dog is found in the well.
Yeah. So Sarah had a dog, and that was her little buddy. The dog. Yeah. The dog was found dead in the well.
All the fruit in food is turning rotten.
Yeah. Everything goes rotten in the town.
And stuff on it.
Yeah. It's almost like the plagues in the Bible. So. A lot of bad stuff's happening in the town. Then you get this happening with the pastor. So everybody's like, all right, it's definitely witchcraft. And who are they going to blame? Well, they're going to blame two girls who are, everything was fine before this homosexuality started happening to these two girls. So it's got to be them. Right. It's got to be these two witches, right? So, so they take these two girls and, they start playing like, hey, we're going to try to get them and try them. And, so they catch Hannah right off the bat. Sarah runs and she runs to Solomon for help. And then that's when we find out that Solomon is actually the bad guy.
And I like this concept because you're like, is Sarah Fier, you find out, is really kind of the good person in all this, which is kind of like an interesting twist.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it turns out Solomon Good is the bad person. So
that's the main twist is the sheriff and everything. His whole family lineage has been sacrificing people, writing people's names in the cave and all this kind of stuff.
Yep. So he got it shows him get the Bible. It shows him open it up and say the passages, and then all of a sudden that cave's created, right? And then that big devil stone's created, and then that's how also that devil heart or whatever the heck that thing is was created.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool because, like, in that cave, Solomon is confiding in Sarah and trying to convince her
to be on his side.
Why he's doing what he's doing and all that. And they get into it, and, like, he stabs her in the hand and kind of rips off her hand, which is like a pretty gruesome scene, which is pretty cool.
Well, the funny thing was too, though, it's like he almost had her for a second when he said he killed one. I killed one person, but it's gonna be for the greater good of everybody. But then when he mentioned it's got to happen every couple of years, somebody's got to die for the greater good. She was like, "What?"
And Sarah Fier was kind of going down this road herself because they suspected she brought the evil, and she's like, "You think I brought the evil? I'm really gonna bring the evil." So she was gonna go and make a deal with the devil.
The book. Yeah. She went to look for the book, but kind of find out Solomon had already had it, and he's the one that made the deal with the devil to begin with.
He beat her to it, I guess.
And of course, the pastor was the first name he wrote on the wall.
And Solomon is the guy who saw them in the woods, along with the Tommy character.
Exactly. So. Solomon saw him in the woods too. So like Josh said, Solomon, so he's trying to wrestle with her. He cuts her hand off, which is the whole story was like Sarah Fier cut her own hand off so she would have a hold of this town without anyone having it all. Solomon cut her hand off as she's trying to escape from him. So she gets out, wraps her arm up, and then finally the town catches her. Actually, Solomon comes out and drags her out and catches her and brings her to town. He's like, "Hey, I caught the witch. Let's string her up." So they, Sarah comes in there and she takes the blame and says, "Look, Hannah had nothing to do with it. It's all me. I bewitched her. I'm the one that made her gay." So spare her. So they spare her. They string Sarah Fier up and they kill her. Right.
What I like about this is the 1600 stuff is only for about an hour, and there's two parts of this, and then it flashes forward back to 1996, 1994, which is cool.
So right about there is where 1666 ends, and then it even flashes on the screen. It says, Fear Street 1994 Part 2. So the next half of the movie is all about Part 2, right? So
I'm glad they do that.
Yeah, that was cool. I liked how they did that. So because that way they can finish it off and give close out the show. So, but what was cool about it was she remember so the girl that played Sarah Fier, who was the main character in the story, remembered everything now. So she remembers it all. She remembers what happened. So she knows the good family is the bad guys. And she knows the sheriff at this point is the bad guy, right? So the whole thing in Part 2 where the sheriff is acting all cool and like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to save you," this and that. The whole time he was the one that made Tommy the killer anyway, right? So now they understand why Sunnyvale is always flourishing and nothing bad happens there, and why the good family's flourishing and has all this money. And they understand why Shadyside, whatever it's called, is not, because they're the ones that keep picking names from people in Shadyside to be the villains and to kill people from Shadyside. So once they figure all this out, they're able to finally take Solomon down, right? So, well, not Solomon, but the sheriff. They go
recruit that black guy from the jail scenes and stuff like that, cool. Which is kind of funny.
Yes. They bring the black guy in.
It's funny because they're like, "Hey, you want to go kill the sheriff?" And he's like, "Let me get my coat," or whatever he says. Let me
grab his stuff. I'm in. Yeah, that was awesome.
And then they lay out this huge plan. They're going to lure these, I don't know what you want to call them, demons, monsters, these things in here, and they're going to lure them into the stores with the blood, and then close the door on them and trap them.
Yeah, you love that thunder in the background too. Perfect for this show.
Special effects here for the episode.
So because the plots, because the plot's been figured out, right? It's like the demon heart knows this, so it starts throwing everything it can at them. All the demons, or all the people that did kill in the past, starts throwing them all out, trying to get them to kill them, so they don't kill the sheriff, because if they kill a sheriff, then it's all over, right? Because then the family line ends, and nobody else in that family can use the book.
Which is weird, because he's got a brother. I don't know why it just doesn't automatically pass to him.
Right, and they don't explain that. Well,
because it's got to pass anyway, so why wouldn't it just pass?
Well, yeah, but it's got to be passed. It's got to be shared, right? So the father's got to share it with the son, or he would have had to share it with his brother, saying, "Hey, I'm the one been doing all this. I'm passing it to you now," right? So if the brother never knew about it, then it would never be passed to him.
Well, I mean, I think the brother knows. He just
potentially
dumb, but
yeah, they never say he does, but potentially, right?
They don't really explain all that too thoroughly.
No, they don't. So once it's all figured out and the sheriff knows they know, they have this big knockdown drag out in the mall. So they go to the mall, and these things are attracted to Sarah Fier / the main girl on the show's blood. So what do? They cut her hand, pour it in a bucket of water, and fill up a bunch of super soakers with their blood.
Soakers. Yeah, they mention a lot of 90s stuff here. They mentioned CD players, CK1, which I love that cologne.
That was my cologne back in the day, man. Yeah, man. Oh yeah.
And then they mentioned the Konami code, which everyone knows.
Yep.
Super Contra, Castlevania, Teenage Mutant. It's a code for extra lives.
And things like that. So
yeah, no, it was cool how they did that, and so
they play the Offspring song, "Keep Them Separated," and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of good '90s stuff in it. But they put their plot together. All right, they know that all the stores have cages in them, right? All right, cool. We can load all these zombie demon things into these cages and lock
Tommy's
them
got
in.
an axe. We've seen him break down doors. He can't
Right.
get out of the back of this thing.
Right.
I mean, there's always a back door to these places. Come on, Tommy.
right,
What are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. Evidently, these little ghost demons aren't smart enough. But so they bring a bunch of these things in, cage them up. You know, of course, the sheriff comes in, and but just so happens, so does his love from part 2, and so she kind of pulls a little little switcheroo on him, and it's like, oh yeah, no, it's okay, you know, kind of trying to get him being close, and then she ganks him, right? So at that point, they probably could have just killed the sheriff then, right?
They could have.
But then,
to me, but it's not.
But then
cool.
it wouldn't have been as cool.
It's not
Wouldn't have been as cool as what they did, So then they run out and they're all spraying the sheriff with the blood with the super soakers, right? And it's all right. Now it's like, release the hounds. Hey Smithers, release the hounds. So they open up the gates and these things all go after the sheriff to kill him. And of course, he ends up getting away and doesn't work out the way they wanted it to. So then they got to follow him.
Well, what's cool after that is they start spraying the blood from the super soakers on all the monsters.
Yeah.
So there's
they're all
like a
killing
big
each other.
royal rumble going on, which is
cool.
a really cool scene.
Yeah. Yeah, so all these monsters are stabbing them. I mean, just going to town on each other.
You know what's
man.
weird about that too? Is I think they all somehow tear each other apart at the same time. Like after that scene, they're like all in pieces again. I'm like, so there was no victor.
Right.
Like,
No,
there's not one
dead.
guy left that's like, okay, I took care of business. Now let me go after the kids again. Like,
but
they're
then
all just like
and then you see those piles starting to come back together. Right?
What else is weird is the Sam character from the present. Like, she's possessed too, but she gets like hit over the head or something, and then she's out cold for a couple of hours. These guys get torn apart, and they automatically start like forming together again. So I'm like, what is going on with the inconsistency with people being possessed and stuff like that?
Well, and then Sam escapes her ties, so then she goes chasing after her love, right? Who's going after Solomon? Because she's got Sarah Fier's blood, so she is going to chase after her to kill her, right? So they get to a point where Sam catches up with her. They get in this big fight kind of thing, and she starts talking to Sam. Sam, it's me. Remember our love. And somehow Sam comes to and like, oh yeah, it is you. Oh my gosh, So nobody else could ever snap out of this, but Sam's able to.
I don't know if she completely snapped out. I think it just
she snapped
out of
enough
it for like a second.
Yeah, she snapped out of it enough, So then, she
where Tommy's like there ain't no snapping him. He's like on a
killing spree, man.
Like, so I don't know.
Out. Yeah.
Maybe like female love is stronger. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. Right? Tommy's love wasn't strong enough for her, but so then it goes. You get the big final duel between the main character and the sheriff, and they're battling it out. And she looks like the sheriff might win for a minute, and then what does she do? She takes his hand and puts it on the heart, and of course, in doing that, he has this big flash of like all the past
scenes,
right? And they see everything happen, and this gives her just enough time to stab him and kill him, and then poof, everything disappears, and game over. The world's saved.
I was a little confused after the scene of this because they come out of the cave and they're in a mansion. I thought they were in the mayor's house. You said that they're not.
Yeah,
right?
So no, I think it was supposed to be the sheriff's house they were in.
There's a pretty big house.
But no, it was big. Yeah, and then of course in the house,
small town.
In the house, they had the good family tree above the mantle, right? And it showed starting with Solomon, and then went up with all the other goods.
And I was confused after that because they walk out of the house, they see some guy, and I thought that was the mayor, but apparently it wasn't. He gets hit by a bus in his car.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they just killed his brother, but
it wasn't the brother because later on the mayor's talking like, oh, I didn't know my brother's evil. So,
right.
but what it was, I think that was just them showing the fact that look, Sunnyvale is no longer safe. Right now, people can die there, and anything can happen, and it's no longer the safe town that it was, and people can die from freak accidents now too. Now that the curse has been broken, and Sunnyvale no longer has the protection of the devil. So yeah, I mean, it was cool the way they closed it out. Now, the way they completely ended it, it was, so of course, it flashed forward, and you got the police tape around the cave. Even inside the room where they were doing the seance kind of thing, you had police tape in there. Yet they left the Devil's Book, right? So like all the other evidence is taken and stuff, but the Devil's Book's still sitting there. It's like what the? They ain't no cops ain't gonna leave the Devil Book just sitting there in the middle of the room. But of course that leaves it open for somebody to flash across the screen and pick the book up and run off. And it's like whoa, So
need some more Fear Street.
Stay tuned for Fear Street 2001 or something, So yeah, so I mean. That ending was okay. They had to leave it open for the next one, but in reality, it's like, come on, who's going to believe the cops would have left the freaking book there?
Yeah, and this is a weird series because it started off so weak, and it's unfortunate because the second and third movie are not too bad, and,
no, they weren't.
They're probably worth watching, especially on Netflix. But that first one, man,
yeah, first movie sucked. Second movie was actually your classic slasher type film, and it was good. They did a good job with it.
I thought the third movie brings it all back and ties it all together.
The third movie did a great job tying the story together, letting you know what happens, and it gives you a little plot twist in there. Like, oh, okay, cool, So it was never about Sarah Fier to begin with. It actually was the good family that did all this, and it was the bad guys. So it's kind of cool how they threw that in there. I enjoyed that. So yeah, I thought the second and third movies were good. First one sucked, but I'm glad. That they were able to fix that in the second and third, and
I just don't know if they'll get a lot of people to stick through it.
Yeah,
a lot of people I think would bail
watch
on the
first one and bail. That's true.
I would bail on the first movie if we weren't reviewing it.
You and me both. And we talked about that after the first one. Yeah, if we weren't reviewing it, I'd have totally bailed because that first one was horrible.
Yeah,
but good thing they the saving grace was they saved themselves because they made the second movie and third movies better, and they're actually worth watching. So overall, I thought it was pretty decent. So all right, man. So what are you going to give this movie?
I would give this movie a 6. I mean, I'm still not that big on it, but for Netflix, I thought it was fine. And for a horror thing, which I'm not big on, I thought it was all right.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I want to say I gave the second one a 6 or a 7, and I'm right there with this, so I'm giving it a 6 as well. Way better than the first. Wasn't a great movie, but they did redeem themselves a bit in the second and third movie. So I wasn't completely irritated that I watched them.
Like I said, you watched this one, the third one for the story. You watched the second one for the action,
right?
And
you just
you just try and get through the first.
The first one you just gotta try to brave yourself through it just to get through it, just so you kind of get an idea of what's going on in the story. So
now, what do you think about the whole series?
The whole series as a whole, I mean, yeah, right about probably 6 or 7. I'd give it as a whole because
I'm giving it a 6. I like how they tied it off. So I think it's worth it in the end. There was some decent payoffs there.
Right, exactly. And of course they're leaving it wide open for another Fear Street series, right? Or at least one more movie. So we'll see. We'll see if that ever gets made. I'd be surprised. But,
yeah, I don't think we're going to see any more of this, but
yeah.
I don't know.
But, if you feel like checking out a okay horror series, as long as you can trudge through that first one, even though it was horrible, and there were a couple good death scenes at the end. There was actually one good death scene at the end. Then you can make it into the second, third ones, which are decent. And like I said, the second one was a really good slasher flick. It was your typical Jason Voorhees, killing people.
Tommy's the man.
Right, Camp Crystal Lake. People. So that one was definitely worth watching.
Kids aren't safe.
No, you do chopping people left and right. So that was okay. So, but yeah, so I mean, overall, if you're super bored and you want to check out a horror series, go ahead and check it out. I mean, if you don't watch it, you're not really missing anything either, though. So. Yeah, but hey, we appreciate you guys watching our reviews. If you like our channel, hit like and subscribe, and we'll check you next time.
See you guys.